Hey, YouTubers. My mic's working. I can see it. I'm 50 today. Today is my 50th birthday. I was born February 19th, 1975. I remember thinking about this day uh, when years ago. It's like, when am I going to turn 50? And I think, boy, that's not till 2025. But here we are, right? I mean, I remember when it was 2000. It, like New Year's 2000, I was in Portland with my friends, just completely blottoed, hammered, drunk. I was 25 years old and just doing the stupidest stuff you can imagine, right? I got lost. If I remember right, I was wandering downtown Portland. I got disconnected with my friends, was just popping in and out of bars, just willy nilly, didn't know where I was at. Somehow I made it back to the hotel just because I think I probably had some angelic guidance, right? I mean, just somebody that, yeah. So I was thinking about, you kind of do kind of a life review when you're 50. And so I wanted to make a video today just to give you guys just to tell you a little bit about me and what it was like for me growing up. Um, just stories, right? I have stories. I have so many stories, and there's no way I could cover all the stories in one video. But I have good stories. I guess we could start. Do you guys remember any time in the womb? I ask people that question all the time to see if you can remember any time in the womb before you were born. It seems like I have some slight memories of just, like you can hear your muffled noises outside of, your eyes are closed, but there's light, a little bit of light coming in. And it kind of looks like a membrane, right? It's like you're looking through a membrane that's got veins and stuff in it. I don't know. Let me know in the comments if you guys, any one of you, if anybody has any memories of before you were born, I'd be really interested in how well those memories are. Yeah. So, being born in 75, the first movie that my parents took us to, and I had a younger brother who was a year younger than me. He was born in 76. My parents took me to Star Wars in 1977 when it first opened. So I was 2 years old, and I have very slight memories of that. I mean, obviously I was two, so I don't remember it that well. We lived in Wilsonville, Oregon until 1979, and I have a lot of really early memories. I remember sitting in the front, and my mom would always have some stuff for me to play with in the front entrance. And I remember Dad would always come in at the end of the day. At the time, he was working for the phone company. Of course, back then I didn't know that. And I just remember that, me and my dad, I didn't have any kind of relationship with my dad. My dad actually wasn't there when I was born. It was my mom and she had a cousin, my great uncle Jerry, and both of them are passed. So both of the people that were there when I was born are gone. My dad's still here, but he was in Portland at the time. He was working for the phone company. He actually had to come back. I think he came back a couple days after I was born to Cottonwood, Idaho. That's where I was born. And then we lived there for 6 months before we moved to Wilsonville. And then after we lived there until 79, we had a next door neighbor kid who loved my mom's egg salad sandwiches. And he'd come over the time. It was a little black kid. He'd come over and play with me, and we'd have, because he'd love Mom's egg salad sandwiches. And then he asked his dad, because he lived with his dad. His mom, I don't know what, I have no idea, where his mom was. Tried making him, he asked for an egg salad sandwich, and his dad just fried an egg, put it on two pieces of bread, and he came over. I remember and told my mom, that was my dad. He was upset because his dad tried to make him an egg salad sandwich, and it was terrible. It was just a fried egg on two pieces of bread. Had a couple of friends that I've never seen again ever since we had My parents had some friends. They went to the Assembly of God Church there in Wilsonville, and I can't remember their last names, but Gavin was his name. He was a little older than me. So Gavin, if you're watching this video, reach out. I'd love to see where you're at. What life, it's. I would love to be able to connect with people that you haven't seen since you were very little, right? So in '79, my dad lost his job at phone company, and so my parents moved to Benton City, Washington, because my grandma and grandpa, my mom's parents, had lived here for since '65. My mom actually graduated from high school here, and my uncle Phil had, and my all three of all two both of my mom's siblings had graduated from high school here. And this is the Hanford area, so my grandpa was already working there. He's able to get my dad a job. It was early '80s. It was right when everybody started losing work, and so it was it was a real blessing that dad could get a job there. And so we bought a brand new house in Benton City at 1200 Grace Avenue. It didn't occur to me until later. There was such a profound numbers and name of a place where I could grow up as a kid. You're 1200 Grace. Little house. House changed over time because mom was a kind of a do-it-yourselfer. We changed some rooms, added a shop, and I met a lot of people. I met all my friends and family there here in Benton City. From late '79 till graduated in '93, and I had so much fun there. A good friend of mine that I went to go help him with his well pump yesterday. Met him. He was my best friend growing up, and didn't have any girlfriends in high school, so it was just me and Ed. And Ed and I would get into a lot of trouble. So in 1987, we moved from Grace. So we lived on Grace for 7 or 8 years, and it was probably on the 8th year, which makes sense, right? New beginnings. We moved out to DeMoss Road, and it was the oldest property on DeMoss Road. If you look at it on a map, it's right where the Yakima River turns north, and it's about probably 15 or 20 river miles before the Yakima River dumps into the Columbia. But it's right, the house that we had at the time, and I wish my parents would have never sold this place. It is the most coveted, as far as I'm concerned, of all the pieces of property I've seen on the Yakima. It is one of the greatest pieces of property on the Yakima River. I was so blessed to have lived there. It was Tom Sawyer. It was like a jungle, and there was this mile-long island in the middle of the river, right at the bank. It was 7 acres, and most of it just ran right along the river. And there was an old the guy that had it before us had built an old trail down there, an easement, so that people could walk their horses down there, because his wife and daughters had horses, and so they always wanted to have horses down at the river. So Ed, my best buddy, and we just spent the whole time down there, and there was just this. I took a picture of the tree, and the tree is still thriving. Amazing tree. It's an old elm tree that sits in a little island on its own little kind of plot, right where the river kind of turns and does one of these, and then it's hard to explain, obviously, in a video, but this beautiful big elm tree, and it was right next to the island, but the river, created a pretty good gap there. So Ed and I actually built. We ran cables from the tree, supported the tree. Had a guide cable to make sure that the cable didn't pull the tree over, because we, ratcheted up the cables pretty high, and we built little rollers so we could roll back and forth to the island. Had a big tree fort at the top of this big elm tree. And that was from '87 to '93. I had 5 years where we were just Sawyer Brown, Tom Sawyer, just playing down at the river. We would do so many things down there, build things, destroy things. We got in trouble and this is interesting, the time period, because I got in trouble, or Ed and I got in trouble for illegal use of fireworks right before the Oklahoma City bombing, and we would have gotten, if it would have been after the Oklahoma City bombing, probably would have done jail time because I was right before I turned 18. This was early '93, like I think when we got busted. Maybe it was in February. But for a couple of years, we just Ed and his dad. Ed comes from he's a part of a German family. They're all German engineers, super intelligent. And we were working out of a pyrotechnics manual, and we had a pyrotechnics book that had pretty much, it was like a chemical Bible. I mean, it told you how to make pretty much anything. Greek fire, mercury fulminate, trinitotoluene. If you want to make any of that stuff, if any of you guys know what I'm talking about, good. Just don't mess with it if you don't know what you're doing. If you're not licensed, don't touch it. But I mean, we had so we started making our own black powder, and we found the right ratio that created the most, because black powder actually works differently under pressure. So the same black powder that will burn fast out in the open might not be as combustible and burn as fast under pressure. So we did have a lot of testing, and I had a rock tumbler, and we made a lot of black powder, potassium nitrate, sulfur, and carbon. Yeah. Made our own carbon. Willow trees actually make the best carbon, but we didn't have access to willow trees, so I can't remember what we burnt, but we made all of our own stuff, and it was, I can't remember how long we'd been playing with this stuff. We almost blew ourselves up a couple times. We were making our own cannon fuse, so we were just taking tissue and rolling it out and getting it wet and letting it cure and making our own cannon fuse. But it wasn't very good cannon fuse because it wasn't as uniform as it needed to be. I remember Ed almost, lighting a cannon fuse, and was like, "Is that thing still lit?" And he got up close to it, and boom, and blew up really close to it. He was kind of freaked us out a little bit. We knew we were playing with fire, and it probably wasn't a good idea. We did a lot of things that we probably shouldn't have been doing, but we did make some cool things. Some rocket engines, that had the specs on them were like 80 pounds of thrust, go a couple miles in about 6 seconds. Pretty cool stuff. Made warheads for them so that they would explode on impact. Just kid stuff, right? There's a lot of people with big boy toys that are a lot more destructive than we are. We didn't want to hurt anybody. We just, wanted to blow things up because, destructive little kids. Anyway, the neighbors started getting a little nervous because, and rightly so, and this is Ed's fault. I did not do this. This was not me. We had made, probably like a 1 inch or like, I think it was 1.25 inches PVC. It was either one or one, about that big. What we do, we just glue the, black powder together. And Ed, there was one guy that used to yell at us for speeding by his house. And generally speaking, we weren't really traveling that fast. The speed limit down on the road back there on that old river road was 50 miles an hour. And, but he chased us down a couple times all the way back to the house. And so Ed was like, "I'm going to blow up his mailbox." I was like, "I don't think that's a good idea. I don't think you should do that." And he's like, "Screw it." So Ed went down, he snuck down there, ran all the way down there at night, blew it up, brought it back to the house. And I remember my cousin Bill and I were sitting down in my basement because I had the basement bedroom in the house. It was an old farmhouse. It was actually built like turn of the century, 1900. We cut a hole in one of the original walls and found an old Sears Roebuck catalog in the wall of the house. It was like from 1908 or something. It was the first house built there, and Duncan had owned all that property along the river. So we had grandfathered water rights off the Yakima River, and it was all free irrigation for us. It was just the cost to run the pump. So it was a prime piece of property. Not only that, but the riverfront property is better than anything else that I know of on the Yakima. And I've been on a majority of the Yakima River in the whole state of Washington. It's the largest river of origin. It's a beautiful piece of property. He brought the mailbox back, and it was just a flat piece of metal. We found out later, and this is why the guy got so angry with this, is he had just paid off his house, and he had the title to his house in the mailbox from the bank, and Ed blew it up. So of course he called the cops. ATF got involved, figured out exactly what chemicals we used because we made our own black powder, and the sulfur that we had bought, it's actually a rose powder that you use to get. It's an insecticide for roses. It's 90% sulfur, but it has 10% trace elements that they tested it. They had a chemist come in and test it, figure out what it was, where we got it, everything. So I think it was a week later or 2 weeks later, we were getting dangerous, right? I mean, so we built like a 3-inch piece of PVC, this big thing, just full of gunpowder, because it was fun. If you stood away from it and you let it off, you could see a ring shockwave go shooting straight up in the air. You could see it. It was like a ring that would go shoot straight up, and actually you can see it if you watch demolition videos. You can see the shockwave goes out and up. And we set it behind this big tree on a table and ran away from it after we lit the fuse. And by this time we had bought real cannon fuse, because you could buy real cannon fuse. We found a place to buy it, and ripped all the bark off the tree on that side, totally demolished the table. And you probably could have heard that blast from a long ways away. And Ed and I were in town. I think it was later that day. We were renting a movie at a video rental place in Richland, and we got a phone call from my brother. My brother was home, Ken, my younger brother. He's only a year younger, and he said, "Hey, cops are here. What should I tell you?" And of course, Mom was home too, and she had told him, and the cop was totally freaked out because Mom had told him that we had some stuff that we were brewing that had instantaneously combusted in my basement, which was technically true because we were just messing around with our concoction and had mixed some chlorine pellets in it, and the chlorine actually will break down and heat up what it does, it just creates enough heat so that the black powder will combust, and it filled the whole house with smoke. Didn't set anything on fire, but I had a jar of it that caught on fire and filled the whole house with smoke. And so Mom was pretty much freaked out anyway. We were terrible. And we got back, and we had, Ed knew and I knew, we talked about it on the way home. I was like, you guys need to come home now. I was like, okay, we're coming home. Came back to the house. There's just one police officer parked out in front, and he had been called in from the neighbors because the neighbors were getting nervous. I mean, we were shaking the neighborhood more aggressively, right, and more continually. And somebody just had their mailbox blown up, right? If Ed hadn't have done that, more than likely, probably wouldn't have had the cops called. And first thing Ed did, we ran down and we had a full bag of ammonium nitrate down there. We never used it, and we never tried to make anything out of it. And he just threw it away. But the cop, confiscated all the rest of our stuff. My rock tumbler. I think there was a bag of potassium nitrate left. But that was pretty much it. And just the black powder that we hadn't used. And he didn't even want to put it in the trunk of his car because of what my mom told him. And I tried to assure him, I was like, look, I know why that stuff, you don't have to worry about it. And he actually called the bomb squad and talked to them because he didn't want to drive around with the stuff in his trunk of his cruiser. So we were charged with, it was first offense, right? First time I've ever been charged with anything. And Ed's parents got an attorney because there wasn't any direct evidence against him. So I think he paid like a $500 fine. Got off on that deal. There's actually because Ed's an amazing guy. He can build and create. He can build anything. Very intelligent. He started selling potato gun launchers and paid his way through college. Was making like $2,000 a week building and selling potato gun launchers on the internet when the internet was just brand new. He actually built a table and rifled 2 inch, I believe it was 2.25 or 2.5. I think it was 2.5 inch PVC barrels, and would sell a kit that cost him about $40 to put together for like $400. So he was selling like 3 or 4 a week, sometimes more than that. And he built a solid aluminum potato gun launcher out of machined aluminum. I think he called it like the T9000 or something. Had a backpack with a bottle of propane, a bottle of oxygen. Went to a tank on the back of this thing, and it would put a 3-inch hole in 1-inch plywood at 100 yards. This thing was dangerous. It would kill anybody, right? It wouldn't even if you were wearing armor, if you got shot by something like that. Ugh. I mean, you might survive, but it'd break all the bones. Yeah, I mean, but he ended up selling that whole business for like, and then he was starting to get contacted because of what he'd get contacted by fire departments on the East Coast asking him, because they knew he was just developing things to launch stuff. And so they wanted to, basically launch like napalm into born areas to backburn. And so, I mean, he was making money doing things like that, selling equipment to do backburn for forest fires and all kinds of stuff. And he actually sent a letter to the ATF and kept that letter saying that when he was selling the potato gun launchers, that it was not illegal. But going back to the original story, Ed didn't get fined for blowing up the mailbox because they couldn't prove it. And it was just, I mean, by now it's water under the bridge, right? It's just, we were just stupid kids doing stupid stuff, being idiots. Never did any of that kind of stuff again. But my cousin and I went in, they charged us with illegal use of fireworks. $186 fine, if I remember right. I think it was $186. And I remember standing in front of the judge, and it was from the time that we got charged and I went in front of the judge, I think that like 2 days before I went in front of the judge, it was within a week, somebody killed themselves with a pipe bomb in Pullman, Washington. There was 2 guys driving in a car, and the passenger was holding a bomb that went off in his lap, killed him, and then it mutilated the guy driving. Didn't kill the guy driving, but hurt him. And so here I am standing in front of this judge for doing this stuff, and he's like, he was pissed. He wanted to throw the book at us, but he realized that, it was a first offense, and we didn't really mean any harm. We hadn't harmed anybody. We were just goofing around and doing dumb stuff. But I mean, if they throw the book at you for, manufacturing an incendiary device, it's 5 years in jail, $10,000 fine, if I remember correctly. That was back then. I don't know what it is now. So that was my high school years, yeah. And Ed's still one of my best friends. Like I said, I helped him yesterday. I helped pull a pump for his mom and dad. We're both 50 years old now. His dad and my dad are both 80 years old. Yeah. So after that, went to Washington State University. We're plugging along here. Still haven't had a girlfriend. Thought I was going to be a chemical engineer because I love chemistry. I thought chemistry was cool. But, after, the first year, I was just more concerned in just having a good time. Because, we all carry burdens from family legacies in different ways. And if you're highly empathic, you carry burdens that other people don't understand. So I just started drinking quite a bit. After my going halfway. Well, after the first semester of my freshman year, I was a party animal. It was Washington State University. That was one of the head drinking colleges in the United States. In the 80s, I think Playboy magazine described it as like the number one party school in the United States. It also had the highest HIV rate per capita of any college back then, because it's only 21,000 students, right, or 18,000 students. You know, if you just get a couple thousand, that's a lot. It's a high percentage rate. I'm sure it's not now, and that it's changed so much, right? I mean, that was over 30 years ago. That was 32, 33 years ago. So, and in the early 90s, so I went there from 93 to 95, and that time period, it was right at the end of that party era. And it was right at the end of, I saw it got eliminated, but you would go to Campus Commons North, and there would be three-tier building or apartments with kegs on the second, and third floor in these giant walkways with just hoses hanging down everywhere. So you could just walk up and just drink off of the balconies of who knows how many party places, and you just walk around and just walk into parties. I mean, there were just open, active parties everywhere. I've still, to this day, I've never seen anything like it. And then they closed it down because the police would just show up and start handing out MIPs, trying to keep people from driving. Or sometimes arresting a bunch of kids, right? Keeping them from driving, because there was a really high rate of DWIs in that area, obviously. And so, yeah, that was a pretty self-destructive time for me. See, I mean, I probably have a couple of stories. I've a couple of Pullman stories. I wrecked my knee in Pullman because if you guys decide to, read my book, I write a little bit about my Pullman years there. And, my cousin and I actually went to a friend's place, Riley, who was staying with me, and his friend, and we drank 2 bottles of tequila and smoked a blunt, and it was a powerful joint, in like 15 minutes. 4 of us sat down, and Riley called me. He's like, "Hey, we got a blunt here." And I was like, "Hey, I think I had a bottle of tequila on me." It's like, "Yeah, I got a bottle of tequila. Come over." And I remember driving over there. We drank, and we just sat down, and we just each took a shot till the first bottle was gone. Smoked a blunt. Went around in a circle. Took shots until the second bottle was gone. It was a bottle of mezcal and a bottle of Jose Cuervo. Disgusting, right? Terrible tequila. But I remember standing up, and it just felt like I was having an acid trip or something. I mean, I was so messed up. My cousin and I remember we were just like, I mean, we were just, and went over to my buddy Jim's place, went to his apartment, and Bill and I started fighting. And we were wrestling around, and I threw his head into a wall, and he went back down the hallway, and he just dove at me and destroyed my right knee. Just boom. I didn't go to the hospital, but it tore all the cartilage in my right. I didn't look down for a while because I thought it was like, I knew it was bad. And so I limped around on that knee never went to the hospital, just swelled up. Slowly kind of got better after a long period of time. It pretty much destroyed my ability to ski, do a lot of things that I wanted to do. Just stupid things that we do to ourselves, right? I mean, why do we do the things that we do? I don't know. Anyway, what else is a good story from Washington State? I think I'll leave the rest of the stories. I mean, there's, the only time that I've ever soiled myself when sleeping was at Washington State University. I almost killed myself. And actually, it's a thing that on average one student, or used to be, on average one student a year would die there because they would asphyxiate on their own vomit because they would be laying on their back and they'd vomit and then choke on it while they were sleeping. And if you're passed out, if you're drunk enough, you won't wake up and you die. I was at a place where I had emptied so much out of my stomach that I didn't have anything left anyway. I had poisoned myself to the point where I've never done that since or before. I've never poisoned myself to that degree. And I was at a state where I just thought I was invincible and just kept drinking until I just could not drink anymore. Drank somebody under when we were playing drinking games, or drank somebody at the table. I at the time I said I had memories where I could open my eyes, and I wasn't when I did this that I couldn't see anything. My vision was black. Had blood coming out of my mouth because at the time I had an open ulcer, a bleeding ulcer from drinking. You start drinking, 12 to 24 beers a day, and your stomach can't handle it, your body can't handle it. It doesn't matter how young you are. And so, yeah, I sold myself. My bowels, urinary tract, completely let go. And I was sitting in a dorm room, and my dorm roommate, I remember waking up the next morning, and Josh got up, and he looks at me, he's like, "What did you do?" I mean, it's disgusting. Totally disgusting. It was bad. And I remember walking out I just walked fully clothed into the showers, stripped down the showers, and I balled up all my clothes and I threw them out in the dumpster. And we lived on the 11th floor, second floor from the top. I was on the 11th floor. Interesting number. And 3-4 o'clock that day, I couldn't find my wallet. And I thought, oh shit, I think I left my wallet in my pants that I threw out into the dumpster. So I went dumpster diving and found them. My wallet was in there. So disgusting. Yeah, so I'll leave the rest of the stories for later. If you ever meet me or we ever, I have a lot of stories for Pullman. And they were all, it's interesting. The stories that really stick to you are the ones where you've done something stupid and forced yourself to learn from something that you've done that was very, very stupid. So this whole string of stories is basically the stupid things that you do, or maybe that you witness are done by other people, that sticks in your memory because it's where you learn, right? We don't learn until we have an impactful moment where the things that we do finally catch up to us, and you have to move on, forgive yourself, let it go, and just start operating in a different way, right? I mean, why keep doing the things that you do, right? Anyway, why keep harming yourself for no reason? And a lot of times we harm ourselves unconsciously and we don't even know it. Most of the time we do. Actually, 99% of the time we're harming ourselves and we have no idea that we're doing that. So have compassion when you run across somebody who's maybe lashing out at their environment. They're just doing it unconsciously and they're not aware of it. So what else we got? After that, I dropped out of college and I left college after my sophomore year because it wasn't going anywhere. I really wasn't enjoying it because I wasn't interested in it. I was a super smart kid, and I had people that were angry with me because they knew that I had unlimited potential. I could have done whatever I wanted to do. I tested extremely high in psychology of all things because I've always understood the human mind. But if your emotional states are out of whack, it takes a long time to understand why they're out of whack and how you're attaching yourself to negative emotions unconsciously without even realizing it. It takes a long time to learn that one. But after that, I started putting in satellite dishes. I can't remember how. I think I just called in for that one, and after I'd done that for a little while, a friend of the family asked me if I wanted to work for him as an electrician. So I started doing that. I started wiring apartments in Kennewick, residential apartments. Did that for a while. I was going to join the union and flunked the drug test to get into the union, and it was a blessing in disguise because if I would have, at the time I was still smoking pot, I was 21 years old, and at the time if I would have passed that, it would have been a route that would have trapped me in a job that would have been less progressive. I wouldn't have learned as much as I was forced to learn by flunking that drug test. And this is actually a lesson that I think everybody needs to learn, is that sometimes the things that will happen to you will seem like a tower moment, like it's the end, like something terrible's happening to you. But a lot of times it's clearing the way for something better to happen to you in the long run. Because after that, I left and I worked for a non-union contractor that was doing commercial work and traveling, and I enjoyed the travel, and I got a lot more experience than I would have gotten if I would have stayed in the union and worked just residential work. Just at the time, just because there was a 2-year residential license in the state of Washington, and by me getting other experience in other areas, it enabled me to get my 4-year journeyman's card much earlier than the guys that even I worked with that were older than me in the union that I worked with. And as a matter of fact, there was one guy who ended up working in the union for 7 years before he got his license, because he went through the residential program and then they made him go through a 5-year commercial apprenticeship. Ridiculous that you would have to work 7 years before you can get your journeyman's card. It doesn't make sense, right? So worked a lot of different jobs after that. Worked in wind farms, Bonneville power stations, fry plants, more housing jobs, more hotel jobs, more nukes. Worked at nukes. Never worked at a coal fire plant or a gas fire plant, but that was about it. I mean, even worked as a lineman on some jobs because there weren't linemen available. So I had the opportunity and was blessed enough to work with the right people where I got to do a lot of different work and even run work. Was working for people, and when you're running work, you're actually working for people. All you're doing is getting people information, and you're never controlling. If you ever try to control, then you're just wasting your time and energy. You're just directing traffic and giving them the information at the right time that they need in order for them to do the work that they got to do, so it makes you look better. You're not going to look good unless you enable and empower the people around you. That's the number one lesson for any of you watching this who are working for other people. If they don't understand that, then they will not hold that job for very long. You might be upset with them, but it's just a matter of fact that they will not hold that job for very long, even if they hold it for a year or so. So after, I worked for, I guess the work isn't as important as, the people that I met along the way. Met a beautiful girl when I was an apprentice, and fell in love with her kids, Corbin and Sam. We lost Corbin a few years back. He got sick and was in seizures. And I guess, instead of just keep telling all these stories, I have so many stories. I can make a 4-hour video, but, time's getting on. It's 11:11 here on the clock. And I think the main thing is that life really is magical. And it's always magical. Well, live in the moment and just love the people around you and show them how much you love them, regardless of what you're doing to yourself. Because, try and do your best to carry your own burdens, and don't lay your burdens on other people. And if you can carry your burdens, and do it with dignity instead of, lashing out when things don't work out, then you'll be blessed. So, love you guys. Thanks for the memories. If you guys, are any of you guys watching this video, I have so many memories. I just covered just a few goofy memories from childhood. I don't have too much more to put there, but I'm sure you guys have so many stories yourself. Be creative and create from your heart space, and just do what you're asked, and eventually you'll find peace in this life. So, love you guys. Have a beautiful day, and I'll catch you on the next one.